True to her resolution, Akudo rose at dawn the next day, her mind set on finding answers. Omasiri was still asleep, the emotional exhaustion of the previous day keeping her in deep slumber. Akudo gently tucked the mat around her daughter and slipped out quietly, determined to return with some guidance. The village was just waking up. Roosters crowed and a few early risers were already at their chores. Akudo headed straight to the far side of the village where Hila Uzo lived. His hut was near a small grove of sacred trees, a place often quiet and visited by those seeking his help. When Akudo arrived, Hila Uzo was sitting outside on a wooden stool, grinding some herbs with a stone. The old man looked up in surprise at the early visitor. "Akudo, is everything all right?" he asked, noticing the concern etched on her face. Akudo greeted him respectfully and was invited to sit on a low bench. She hesitated, wondering how to begin. Uzo had known their family for years. He had tried to save her during her illness and had celebrated her recovery. How could she explain what was happening now? "Hila Uzo," she began slowly, "I have come to seek your wisdom. It's about Omasiri. Something is wrong with my daughter." Uzo's bushy grey eyebrows knitted together with concern. "Is she ill?" he asked. "Not in body," Akudo replied, struggling to find the right words. "It's her mind, her spirit perhaps. Every year on the same day, she becomes different." Uzo put aside his grinding stone and faced Akudo fully. "Tell me everything," he said gently. Akudo took a deep breath and recounted the strange events of the past 3 years. How on one day each year, Omasiri would have spells of confusion, memory loss, or odd behavior. She described the forgetting, the blank looks, the recent incident of Omasiri getting lost on a familiar path. As she spoke, tears welled up, but she brushed them away. "I know this is not ordinary Uzo," she said, her voice trembling. "I feel it in my heart that it's tied to that time when I was sick, when I nearly died, and then suddenly recovered." Uzo listened intently, his expression growing more serious. When Akudo finished, he nodded slowly. "I have wondered about that," he admitted. "Your recovery was nothing short of a miracle. I give you medicine, yes, but I did not expect you to survive, let alone become completely healthy overnight. It was as if..." He paused. "As if what?" Akudo prompted, leaning forward. Uzo sighed. "Akudo, your life was extended beyond its time. Such a thing does not happen naturally. I sense that on the night you nearly died, a bargain was struck, though I cannot see by whom. The cowries show that your life continued because another life or soul was given in exchange and is now slowly being consumed." Despite expecting something like this, hearing it spoken aloud made Akudo reel. She steadied herself with one hand on the floor. "Another soul being consumed," she repeated in a hollow voice. Uzo reached out and gently touched Akudo's arm. "Your daughter's spirit, Akudo. It shines dimly here. I fear that Omasiri gave up a part of herself to save you. Each year, pieces of her are being taken." "She loves you fiercely," Uzo said softly, "enough to offer her own soul. Such love is powerful, but it can be perilous when spirits are involved." Akudo wiped her tears, and a hard determination glinted in her eyes. "Now that we know, how do we stop it? How do I save her?" Uzo sighed heavily. "Akudo, this is not a simple sickness I can brew a herb for. We are dealing with a pact bound by powerful forces. Usually, such contracts are not easily broken. In fact..." He hesitated, not wanting to say the next words. "Tell me," Akudo urged, bracing herself. Hila Uzo continued gently. "In the stories, once a soul is promised, it belongs to the spirit. The person may live on borrowed time until the spirit takes what's due. Many times, they simply wither away or lose themselves entirely. I have never heard of someone getting back a soul freely given. The spirit holding it would not want to give up its payment." Each word felt like a blow to Akudo's heart. She refused to accept that there was no hope. But there must be a way, she insisted. What if someone offered something else in exchange or confronted the spirit? Can a stronger power intervene? Uzo looked at her sadly. Confronting such a spirit is dangerous. They do not bargain unless they are sure of their gain. If you try to offer something else, it would likely demand something equally dear. A soul for a soul, perhaps, or a life for a life. Akudo went very still. A life for a life, she echoed quietly. The idea was like a seed dropping into her mind, a terrifying seed, but one that took root instantly. Would she give her own life or soul to save Omasiri? Without a second thought, yes, her life was worth nothing if her daughter would be lost. Hilauzo saw the look on her face and quickly cautioned, "Do not do anything rash, Akudo. Listen to me. We don't fully understand what entity we are dealing with. Walking into a bargain with such a being could doom you both." Akudo lowered her head. "So, what do you advise then? To watch my daughter disappear piece by piece until nothing is left of her?" There was a sharp edge of pain in her voice. Uzo frowned. He was a man of knowledge and remedies, but this was beyond the normal scope of his practice. Yet he cared for Akudo and Omasiri like his own family. He could not simply say there was nothing to be done. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we might appeal to benevolent forces. I can perform a cleansing ritual, offer sacrifices to the gods to intercede. Maybe, if the gods will it, they can nullify the dark pact." Akudo grasped onto that. "Yes, a ritual. Anything. We have to try." The healer nodded. "I will prepare for a ceremony tonight at the shrine. Bring Omasiri. We will pray and make offerings to seek mercy." Akudo agreed, though a part of her doubted that the higher gods, who had remained silent thus far, would suddenly intervene. Still, she was willing to attempt every possible path. Before she left, Akudo hesitated and then asked in a low voice, "Uzo, there's something else. I had a dream, no, more like a nightmare, about an old woman in the forest with eyes like embers. She spoke to me, said life is not taken for nothing. Have you heard of such an old woman spirit?" Hila Uzo's expression grew even more serious. Many spirits can appear as an old person, especially to mask their power. An old woman with ember eyes, that sounds like a very ancient spirit, perhaps even a manifestation of the kind of being who struck this bargain. Akudo swallowed hard. It was as she suspected. Her dreams were not just dreams, but messages or glimpses of the truth. "Be very careful, Akudo," Uzo warned. "If that spirit is reaching into your mind, it knows your mind. It may be watching." Akudo shuddered. The thought of that old woman's gaze on her even in sleep was chilling, but it also fueled her resolve. If the spirit thought it could scare her into inaction, it was wrong. She thanked Hila Uzo profusely for his help and left his hut with a heavy yet resolved heart. The sun had fully risen now, and villagers were about tending to their daily work. Everything looked normal and peaceful, belying the storm of emotions and supernatural entanglements that lay hidden in Akudo's life. Akudo hurried home, eager to check on Omasiri and tell her that they would seek a solution together. As she walked, she noticed her hands were shaking. She clenched them to stop the tremble. She needed to be strong and composed for her daughter. Inside their hut, Omasiri was awake, sitting up on her mat. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying anew. When she saw her mother enter, she quickly wiped her face. "Ma, where did you go?" Omasiri asked, concerned. "I woke and you weren't here." Akudo managed a comforting smile and went to sit beside Omasiri. She took her daughter's hands in hers. "I went to see Hila Uzo," she said gently. Omasiri's eyes widened. What did you tell him?" "I told him what has been happening to you," she said, watching her closely. Omasiri bit her lip, anxiety evident. "Ma, I wish you hadn't. I don't want everyone to think I'm cursed or something." "Hush," Akudo said and squeezed her hands. "He only wants to help. We both want to help you." Omasiri lowered her gaze. "And what did he say?" Akudo took a slow breath. She decided not to reveal everything Uzo said, not yet. There was no need to burden Omasiri with the confirmation that her sacrifice was known until, at least, we tried the ritual. She wanted to keep her daughter from despair. "He believes it may be a spiritual affliction, perhaps from a hostile spirit or a curse. He suggested we perform a cleansing ritual and pray to the gods for intervention. We are going to the shrine tonight to try and free you from this shadow." Omasiri nodded slowly. "If you think it will help, I'll do it." Akudo placed a hand on Omasiri's cheek. "My dear, I will do anything to make sure you are well. We will get through this, I promise." Omasiri leaned into her mother's hand, eyes watery. She wanted to believe that a ritual might somehow undo what she had done, though a part of her doubted it. The old woman in the forest had felt so beyond the reach of ordinary gods or prayers, but for her mother's sake, she would hope. That evening, as dusk fell, Akudo and Omasiri made their way to the village shrine, where Hila Uzu awaited with preparations for the ritual. Both were quiet, hearts heavy with anticipation and fear of what the night might bring. Akudo clutched her daughter's hand tightly, silently making another vow in her heart. "If the gods cannot or will not restore Omasiri, then I will find another way, even if it means bargaining my own life." The cleansing ritual at the shrine was performed with earnest hope. Akudo, Omasiri, and Hilauzu offered a white cockerel and kola nuts to the gods, praying late into the night for Omasiri's deliverance. By the flicker of oil lamps, Uzu chanted and sprinkled holy water, and Akudo and Omasiri knelt together, tears mingling with the dust as they begged for mercy. When it was over, Akudo felt some weight lift, but whether it was the burden on Omasiri's soul or simply the solace of shared prayer, she could not tell. Omasiri felt calmer for a time, believing perhaps that the gods might aid her. Yet, as months passed, life continued much the same. Omasiri's everyday demeanor improved slightly with the comfort that they were trying everything, and no strange episodes occurred in the interim. But both women knew the true test would come with the next anniversary of that fateful night. As the 4th year's day drew near, an unspoken tension gripped their household. Akudo did not let Omasiri out of her sight that day. She had quietly informed a few neighbors that she and her daughter would be busy with personal matters and not to disturb them. She wanted no additional stress or prying eyes on Omasiri today. Omasiri in turn tried to carry on normally, helping her mother with chores in the morning. They walked in the garden together, harvesting a few ripe yams. Akudo insisted they both come inside and rest by midday, even though normally they might continue working. Omasiri didn't protest. In truth, her heart was thudding with fear as each hour passed. Would the ritual they performed shield her, or would the old woman's claim over her soul overpower those prayers? Akudo sat with Omasiri after lunch, telling small, funny stories to lighten the mood. They husked maize together, sitting on a mat by the hearth. Omasiri listened to her mother's voice and tried to absorb every word, every detail of her presence, as if storing it in case she might not remember later. She didn't voice that fear, but it gnawed at her. Afternoon waned into early evening. The sun hung low and golden. Akudo lit a lamp even before darkness fell, determined to chase away any symbolic shadows. She brewed a pot of Omasiri's favorite tea, lemongrass and ginger, hoping its warmth would steady them both. They sat on the bench outside their hut to catch the last of the daylight. The air was still, colored by the orange glow of sunset. Akudo held Omasiri's hand in her lap, squeezing it gently from time to time. For now, they would try the path of faith and ritual, clinging to the chance of a miracle. The truth was laid bare, and there was no turning back from what Akudo now knew. Her daughter's soul was on the line, and a mother's love would not rest until it was saved. "Remember how you used to race Nkem in the evenings down this very road?" Akudo smiled at a memory. Nkem was Omasiri's childhood friend. You always won, even though you were younger. You were so fast, like a little antelope. Omasiri nodded and smiled faintly, and I would jump up and down cheering, and Nkem would pretend to sulk until I gave her a piece of coconut candy to make her smile again. She recalled that fondly. It was a cherished childhood memory. Encouraged, Akudo continued. Those were happy days. You girls used to climb the udala fruit tree over there. She pointed at a large tree near the fence. I remember scolding you both for tearing your wrappers while scrambling up like little monkeys. A soft laugh escaped Omasiri's lips. We just wanted the ripest fruits at the top. We thought you wouldn't notice if we snuck them. Akudo chuckled, though her eyes glistened. I always noticed, but I let you have your fun. They fell quiet for a moment, watching the sun slip behind distant palm trees. Dusk settled gently. Akudo's grip on Omasiri's hand tightened slightly as she felt her daughter's palm grow clammy. Are you feeling all right, my dear? She asked quietly. Omasiri opened her mouth to answer, but paused. She felt an odd tingling at the back of her mind, a sensation she remembered from previous years. It was like the quiet before an oncoming storm, a pressure in the air that made her skin prickle. I'm not sure, she whispered. Akudo rose. Perhaps we should go inside now. We'll light more lamps, maybe say a prayer. Just then, Omasiri blinked, and her gaze drifted away from her mother, unfocused. The color seemed to drain from her face. Akudo's heart lurched. Omasiri, she said carefully, stepping in front of her daughter to catch her eyes. Omasiri's eyes flickered, trying to refocus on the woman in front of her. She saw Akudo's face, full of concern and love, but in that instant, it was as if Omasiri were looking at a kind stranger. The knowledge that this was her mother, the person whose name was Akudo, whose voice and story she knew by heart, that knowledge flickered like a dying flame. Akudo's voice came gently, trembling on the edges. It's me, Omasiri. It's Mama. Omasiri repeated the words softly. It felt familiar on her tongue, and yet the context was slipping. Mama means mother. This woman is my mother, isn't she? She knew it just moments ago. Of course, this is my mother. But a sudden fog was enveloping her mind, blurring the lines of that certainty. Akudo raised a hand and caressed Omasiri's cheek. The touch was warm and known. Omasiri felt tears well up in her eyes from the confusion and fear creeping over her. I stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry, but who are you? The last light of day faded as those words left Omasiri's lips. To Akudo, it felt as though the world stopped. She felt something inside her break, a pain deeper than any she had ever known. Even though she had braced herself, hoping it wouldn't come to this, hearing her only child not recognize her was devastating. Akudo's lips parted in shock, her vision blurred with tears, but she forced herself to stay calm on the outside. She gently placed both hands on Omasiri's shoulders. I'm your mother, Akudo. Your mama, my dear. Omasiri pressed her hands to her temples, shaking her head as if trying to clear it. Mother, yes, mother, she muttered. Bits of memory fluttered around just out of reach. She knew she had a mother she loved dearly, but in that cruel moment, she could not reconcile that abstract idea with the warm, loving woman standing in front of her. It was as if the connection between the concept and the person had been severed. Akudo's voice shook as she tried again. It's all right. I'm right here, my child. I won't leave you. Omasiri's face contorted with panic and heartbreak. I should know you, but I can't remember, Omasiri cried out, anguish contorting her face. A sob burst from her, and she stumbled back a step, as if terrified by her own inability to recognize the person she loved most. Akudo quickly pulled her into a tight embrace. Shh, it's all right, she murmured.
although tears streamed down her own cheeks. She cradled Omasiri's head against her shoulder. "It's going to be all right. I'm here. I've got you." Omasiri trembled violently in her mother's arms, her mind frantically grasping at the disappearing threads of her identity and relationships. "Ma, Ma," she kept repeating, as if the word was an anchor in a stormy sea, but each repetition felt less certain than the last. Akudo held her daughter close, humming an old lullaby through her tears. Inside, her heart was screaming in grief and fury at the cruel fate that had led them here. But she kept the lullaby humming, her voice as tender as she could make it, trying to soothe Omasiri's fractured soul.
Little by little, Omasiri's sobs subsided. She slumped against Akudo, utterly spent. The confusion and emotional storm had drained her. Akudo gently guided her daughter back into the hut, supporting her as one might support a sick or injured person. Omasiri's eyes were half closed, her expression dazed. She no longer asked who Akudo was, but she also did not speak her name or any word at all, as if afraid of saying the wrong thing again. Akudo helped Omasiri lie down on her sleeping mat. She fetched a damp cloth and wiped her daughter's tear-streaked face. "Rest now, my child," Akudo whispered, voice wavering. "You'll feel better soon. I'm here with you." Omasiri blinked slowly. She reached out a hand, grasping weakly at Akudo's clothing like a child seeking assurance in the dark. Akudo took that hand and held it between her own. "I'm so sorry, Mama," Omasiri murmured, her voice thick with residual tears. Though she still seemed unsure, on some level she knew this woman was her mother. Her heart knew even if her mind played tricks. "I don't want to forget you." You won't, Akudo said, trying to swallow the lump in her throat. "Just sleep now, Omasiri. I'm right here." Exhaustion and the heaviness of her lost memories pulled at Omasiri. Finally, like a small child, she closed her eyes, fingers still wrapped around Akudo's. Her breathing evened out as she slipped into a troubled sleep, tears still drying on her eyelashes. Akudo sat by her daughter for a long moment, not daring to move, her hand firmly in Omasiri's grasp. She stared at Omasiri's face, the face that only hours ago was bright with recognition and love, now blank and peaceful in sleep. Akudo brushed a coil of hair from Omasiri's forehead, her fingers gentle. Anger burned alongside sorrow in Akudo's chest. Anger at the malevolent being that had done this to her child, and at herself for not preventing it. But above all, a fierce resolve had crystallized in her soul. She would not allow this to continue, not for one more day, one more hour. Carefully, Akudo slipped her hand out of Omasiri's and stood. Omasiri remained asleep, breathing softly. Akudo went to the corner of the hut and picked up a shawl, her thick wrap for night, and draped it over her shoulders. She took her walking stick in hand. Her movements were steady, almost calm, belying the storm within her. She knew what she had to do. The time had come to face the old woman of the forest, the spirit who had accepted her daughter's soul as payment. If a life must be given to set things right, then Akudo would give her own freely. Akudo glanced back at Omasiri one last time. The oil lamp on the table cast a soft glow over the girl's sleeping form. Omasiri looked small and vulnerable, like the little baby Akudo used to cradle in her arms years ago. A surge of love swelled in Akudo's heart, so powerful it brought fresh tears to her eyes. But these tears were different, filled with resolve. "My precious girl," Akudo whispered, her voice catching. "You will be all right, I promise." She reached down and pulled a light blanket over Omasiri, tucking her in tenderly, as if tucking in all the love and memories that threatened to slip away. Without another moment's hesitation, Akudo turned and left the hut. Night had fully fallen outside. The village was silent, everyone indoors, unaware of the drama unfolding in Akudo's family. The moon was not full tonight, but its silver crescent along with the starry sky provided enough light for Akudo to see the way. She walked briskly towards the edge of the village, the familiar path that led to the forest. With each step, her resolve hardened. She did not feel fear now, only determination and a strange calm that comes with a decided purpose. As Akudo reached the line of tall grasses and palm bushes marking the boundary between the last homestead and the wilderness, a gentle wind picked up, rustling the leaves. She pulled her shawl tighter around her. In a low, steady voice, Akudo spoke a prayer into the night, addressing it to any benevolent spirits or the gods of her ancestors. Guide me and give me strength. Let no harm come to my daughter. Let this end tonight. Then, gripping her walking stick, Akudo stepped onto the narrow forest path. The darkness seemed to welcome her like the closing of a curtain behind. With unwavering resolve, Akudo plunged into the embrace of the trees, ready to confront the ancient bargain and the old woman who had claimed her daughter's soul.
Akudo moved through the midnight forest with purposeful strides. The trees towered around her, their leaves murmuring as if gossiping about the lone woman passing below. Unlike her daughter's fearful trek years ago, Akudo felt no terror, only a righteous determination. She was a mother on a mission, and nothing would stop her from reaching her destination. The deeper she went, the more the forest seemed to come alive. Owls hooted from unseen branches. Twigs cracked under her feet. Once, a dark shape scurried across the path ahead. A forest rodent or perhaps something else. Akudo pressed on, gripping her walking stick. The narrow path led her unerringly to the place she had seen so often in her dreams. Soon, the trees parted to reveal a small clearing. Pale moonlight filtered down, illuminating the very clearing where Omasiri had sealed the pact years before. At first, it appeared empty. The fire that Omasiri had described was not there, just the ghostly shapes of rocks and dense foliage at the edges of the clearing. Akudo stepped into the open space and planted her feet firmly on the soft earth. She cleared her throat, her heart pounding. "I know you are here," she called out into the darkness, voice steady. The still night swallowed her words for a moment. Akudo took another step forward. "Old mother of the forest, spirit who walks these woods, show yourself. I have come to speak with you." For a heartbeat, there was no response. Then, a faint cracking sound came from the edge of the clearing. Akudo turned to see what looked like a tiny spark of fire hovering in the air, growing brighter by the second. From the shadows, the old woman emerged as if formed from the darkness itself. First, her shining eyes became visible, those eyes like smoldering coals. Then her hunched form took shape under the moonlight. Tonight, she carried a small lantern woven of reeds and glowing with an inner flame. Perhaps she had lit it when Akudo called. Akudo's pulse quickened at the sight of the crone, but she stood her ground. The old woman stepped forward slowly, her bare feet seeming to glide over the earth. She wore the same tattered wrap and bead necklace Omasiri had described. On her leathery face, a knowing smile played. So, the mother comes at last. Her tone held a hint of amusement. Akudo lifted her chin. "You know who I am." The old woman chuckled, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "Yes, Akudo of Unubi, I know you, mother of Omasiri." She drew out Omasiri's name and Akudo's face tightened involuntarily at the familiar way this spirit spoke it. "If you know us, then you know why I'm here," Akudo said, trying to keep her voice calm. The old woman tilted her head, feigning thought.
Perhaps. But why not humor an old one and speak your mind? She drifted closer, lantern held up. In its flickering light, the shadows on the old woman's face made her look ghastly. Half her face had lit in orange, the other half in darkness. Akudo took another step forward, holding the woman's fiery gaze. Despite the spirit's slightly shorter stature, her presence was formidable. Power radiated from those eyes. But Akudo's love filled her courage. You made a bargain with my daughter 4 years ago. It was not a question, but a statement. The old woman nodded slowly. Ah, a fine bargain it was. A young soul for a life that was slipping away. And I kept my word, Akudo. You live, do you not? Healthy as a horse. She grinned as if sharing a joke. Akudo's stomach turned at the casual way this creature discussed it. At what cost, she spat. You are destroying my daughter to pay that debt. Piece by piece, you are consuming her soul. The old woman shrugged one bony shoulder. A deal is a deal. The price must be paid. Life is not given for nothing. Your girl understood that. She was a child, Akudo snapped, anger flaring. She was desperate and scared. Maybe she didn't understand fully. The crone's eyes glinted. Oh, she understood enough to agree, and what is done cannot be undone, at least not without consequences. Akudo stepped closer, holding the old woman's gaze. That's why I'm here, to change the consequences, to negotiate a new bargain if I must. The old woman let out a cackling laugh, the sound echoing through the clearing. Negotiate with me? Child, you have nothing that I want. Your daughter's soul is already mine by right. Why would I trade a known delicacy for something lesser? Akudo's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. What about a soul of equal worth? A life for a life? The old woman narrowed her eyes, studying Akudo's face. Equal worth, you say? Akudo lifted one hand to her own chest. Take mine. Take my life, my soul, whatever you want, but release Omasiri from the bargain. Restore what remains of her spirit and let her be free. I will take her place. For a moment, the forest itself seemed to hold its breath. The old woman stared at Akudo, and a flicker of surprise or perhaps admiration passed over her ancient features. She began to circle Akudo slowly, the way a predator circles prey, lantern casting moving shadows around them. You would give yourself so easily, Akudo, the old woman murmured, peering at Akudo from head to toe. Sacrifice yourself for the girl who sacrificed herself for you? How touching! A mother's love truly is a profound thing. Akudo turned as needed to keep the woman in front of her, unwilling to let her slip behind. I mean it, she said firmly. If it's within your power, trade my soul for hers, and do it now. The old woman stopped her pacing. Such eagerness. But do you know what you offer, Akudo? If I take your soul, it is not a quick death you offer. It is an eternal bondage. Your daughter's payment has been stretched over years. With you, I could choose to draw it out even longer or consume you in one gulp. You would belong to the darkness. There will be no peaceful rest with your ancestors. Akudo felt a chill at those words, but did not waver. I am not afraid. My daughter's life and spirit are worth any price. I did nothing to earn the extra years I've had. Years that should have been my end. They were a gift from my child, and I will not keep that gift while she wastes away. Take me instead. Let that balance your books, spirit.
The old woman threw back her head and laughed, a high, eerie sound that bounced through the clearing. Balance my books. Oh, you mortals and your sense of justice. She stepped closer again, her lantern's glow lighting the determined fire in Akudo's eyes. And what makes you think I would accept this exchange? Perhaps I enjoy nibbling at your daughter's soul bit by bit. It has a sweet flavor, ripened by her enduring love and sacrifice. Why would I trade a known delicacy for a different meal? Akudo's nails bit into her palms as she clenched her fists. Because, she said slowly, you are already getting what you want from me, aren't you? My life was supposed to end. By keeping me alive these years, you have essentially stolen from death. My continued existence is part of the bargain. If you take me now, you still gain a soul and life. If you refuse, then I promise you this. I will find a way to thwart you. I will not let my daughter continue to be your food. Perhaps I cannot kill a spirit like you, but I will fight until my last breath to break this pact. At that, the old woman's smiling face suddenly contorted into a scowl. Her eyes flared brighter. Insultant human, she hissed, and for the first time Akudo felt the raw power emanating from the being in front of her. A wave of oppressive energy that made the air crackle. You dare threaten me in my own domain? Akudo's heart hammered, but she didn't back down. A mother dares anything for her child, she replied, voice hard as iron. They locked eyes in a tense standoff. The forest seemed to darken around them, the shadows deepening as the old woman's anger pulsed. Then, as quickly as it came, the old woman's scowl vanished, replaced by a cold, business-like expression. Very well, the spirit said, voice suddenly calm and flat. Your offer is acceptable. A soul for a soul, a life for a life. The bargain shall be reversed. Akudo released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. You will free Omasiri's soul, she pressed. The old woman gave a curt nod. When the trade is done, your daughter will be as she was before our paths crossed. Her memories, her spirit whole. The illness that fate had given you will return to claim its due, but you will take her place in my ledger. Akudo understood. Once this was done, Omasiri would be whole, but Akudo herself would likely die or vanish as part of the exchange. A fair price, she thought. She had lived years longer than she expected. Now she could let go, knowing her daughter would be safe and whole. I accept, Akudo said solemnly. The old woman's thin lips curled into a strange smile. Of course you do. Step forward then, and we shall seal it as before, blood and word. Akudo stepped forward until she was within arm's reach of the old woman. She stood tall, resolute. The old woman set her lantern on a tree stump nearby, freeing her gnarled hands. From a fold in her ragged robe, she drew a small curved knife. The blade gleamed wickedly in the dim light. Hold out your hand, the spirit instructed. Akudo obeyed, extending her left hand. She did not flinch as the old woman took her wrist with one icy hand and drew the knife's tip across Akudo's palm. Blood welled up in a red line. The pain was sharp but brief. The old woman then made a cut on her own palm, just as she had done with Omasiri. Dark, thick blood, if it could be called blood, oozed from the cut, nearly black and oddly cold. She clasped her hand against Akudo's, mingling their blood. Akudo felt a tingling shock shoot through her arm at the contact, but she held still. Speak the words, Akudo of Unubi, intoned the old woman. State the bargain so all spirits may witness. Akudo's voice was clear and unwavering as she declared, I give my life and soul in exchange for my daughter Omasiri's soul and freedom. Let her spirit be returned and the bond on her be broken. I take her place willingly. As soon as she finished, the old woman tightened her grip on Akudo's hand. Akudo gasped as an overwhelming force surged through her. The clearing around them abruptly erupted in motion. Wind whipped up from nowhere, swirling leaves and dust into the air. The trees themselves seemed to groan. The old woman began to chant in that ancient harsh tongue, faster and louder than she had with Omasiri. This was a different ritual, one of unbinding and rebinding. The word stung Akudo's ears, and the very ground beneath her trembled violently. Akudo felt a sudden pain in her chest, like a heavy weight pressing inward. She staggered, but the old woman's grip held her upright. Through the pain, Akudo's thoughts flew to Omasiri. She envisioned her daughter sleeping peacefully at home, hopefully soon to awaken whole and happy. That image gave her strength to endure. The old woman's eyes blazed bright, reflecting the strange fire from her lantern. The swelling wind howled now like a chorus of anguished voices. Akudo's vision blurred as the pressure inside her built to a crescendo. It felt as if something were being wrenched out from deep within her, a pulling, searing sensation that stole her breath. She let out a cry, whether of pain or defiance, she wasn't sure. Then, with a final shouted word from the old woman, the force tearing at Akudo suddenly released. The wind ceased all at once, and an eerie silence fell over the forest. Akudo collapsed to her knees, the old woman finally letting go of her hand. Akudo's bloodied palm hit the dirt, supporting her weight as she doubled over, gasping for air. She felt hollow, as if an integral part of her had just been ripped away, yet also strangely at peace. The old woman took a step back, swaying slightly. Even she seemed to have expended great energy in that ritual. She observed Akudo with an unreadable expression. "It is done," the spirit said quietly. Akudo looked up, her strength fading quickly. She was already feeling faint, as though her body were turning insubstantial. "Omasiri?" she managed to ask. The old woman gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Her soul is restored and free. The bond is broken." A shaky smile of profound relief spread across Akudo's face. Tears of gratitude filled her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, surprising herself with the courtesy, but it was genuine. In this moment, she felt no hatred for the old woman, only a profound sense of completion. The bargain was finally balanced. The old woman waved a hand dismissively. "Do not thank me. You forced my hand with your boldness. But I suppose even an ancient spirit can appreciate the symmetry of what has occurred here." She retrieved her lantern and looked at Akudo once more. "You are a fool, Akudo, but a brave and loving fool. Perhaps that will be remembered." Akudo's vision was darkening at the edges. Her body felt light, as if she were no longer quite attached to the earth. She tried to rise, but found she had no strength left in her legs. Instead, she sank sideways gently, lying on the cool ground of the clearing. High above, through the canopy, she could see a sliver of moon and a scattering of stars. Her mind drifted. She wondered if her late husband was watching from those stars and if she would see him soon. She hoped Omasiri would forgive her for leaving without a goodbye. The old woman stepped forward and, to Akudo's surprise, carefully adjusted the shawl around Akudo's shoulders, almost in a gesture of respect or perhaps preparation. Akudo's eyelids grew heavy. She felt no pain now, only a great fatigue and a curious warmth spreading in her chest. The forest around her seemed to be fading, the sounds muffled, as if she were underwater. As her consciousness slipped away, Akudo's lips formed one last word, a name, Omasiri. A single tear rolled down her cheek into the soil just as her eyes closed and everything went black. At that moment, somewhere far behind in the village, Omasiri stared in her sleep as a sudden rush of memories and light flooded her mind. Back in the clearing, the old woman stood over Akudo's motionless form. For a brief moment, a flicker of something like pity passed across the ancient spirit's face. She reached down and gently removed the shawl from Akudo's body. Then, with surprising care, she lifted Akudo's now limp form in her arms. Lantern in hand, the old woman carried Akudo away from the clearing and into the depths of the forest, the darkness swallowing them both. The clearing fell empty and silent, save for the faint echo of the old woman's parting whisper that seemed to linger in the air. Life is never given for nothing. The first pale light of dawn crept into Akudo's hut, painting the walls in chilly grey. Omasiri stared on her mat, groggy and disoriented. Her head felt heavy, as though she had woken from a long, fevered dream. For a moment, she simply lay there, listening to the morning sounds of the village. A rooster crowing, distant voices of women at the stream, the crackle of a nearby cooking fire. Then suddenly, It was as if a floodgate opened in her mind. Memories rushed back. Her childhood, her father's faith, every detail of her life that had ever felt blurred or lost in recent years. Gasping, Omasiri sat up. She remembered everything. And not just the old memories. She recalled the night before with stunning clarity, sitting outside with her mother. The terrible moment she couldn't recognize Akudo, the despair in her mother's eyes, and then she recalled crying in her mother's arms, being laid down to sleep. "Mama!" Omasiri exclaimed, her voice echoing off the hut's mud walls. She jumped to her feet, heart pounding. The hut was empty except for her. Akudo was nowhere to be seen. "Mama!" Omasiri called again, louder, panic creeping in. She rushed outside, expecting to see Akudo tending the morning fire or sweeping the yard. The compound was empty. Only the early sun and a cool breeze greeted her. Omasiri's stomach lurched. Where could her mother be at this hour, especially after last night's ordeal? She spun on her heel and ran back inside, her eyes scanning frantically for any sign, any clue. That's when she saw it. Near the hearth, Akudo's everyday wrapper, folded neatly in a square and placed gently on the ground. On top of it lay Akudo's wooden hair comb. Omasiri's breath caught in her throat. Her mother's wrapper and comb left behind like this? It was as if Akudo had deliberately set them there, a silent message. With trembling hands, Omasiri picked up the comb. It was a simple wooden comb that her mother always tucked in her hair, one Omasiri had seen and handled countless times. She clutched it to her chest as realization dawned, an icy dread mixed with overwhelming sorrow. "No! No, no, no," she whispered, shaking her head in denial. Hot tears blurred her vision. "Mama!" she screamed. The anguish in her voice startled a flock of birds off the thatched roof. Omasiri bolted out of the hut again, this time her eyes turning toward the forest beyond the village. She didn't remember her mother leaving in the night, but in her gut, she knew Akudo had gone into the forest to confront the old woman, to save her. Freshly restored memories of that faithful night years ago and everything since coalesced in Omasiri's mind. She understood now what must have happened. Her mother had somehow learnt about the bargain and had gone to undo it, likely at the cost of her own life. The thought made Omasiri's knees nearly buckle. She had never wanted her mother to pay that price. "Mama, why?" she cried, although she knew the answer. Because Akudo loved her as fiercely as she had loved Akudo. Barefoot and still in her rumpled night clothes, Omasiri sprinted across the compound and down the path leading out of the village. She ignored the curious looks of an elderly neighbor carrying firewood. All she could think of was finding her mother, somehow stopping whatever had happened, even though dawn was already here and deep down she sensed it was too late. The tall grass whipped at her legs as she neared the forest's edge. Omasiri plunged ahead, heart hammering. "Mama!" she yelled into the trees. "Mama, where are you?" Only the forest's morning silence answered. The sun's rays were growing brighter, piercing through the foliage in golden shafts. She stumbled into the forest entrance, the same place she had gone years ago in search of hope. Now she searched for her mother. "Mama!" she cried again, voice cracking. She ran a few steps down the narrow trail, but her feet slowed as uncertainty hit her. What would she do if she found the old woman? The idea of facing that spirit alone made her blood run cold. And if her mother was gone, how could she bear it? Tears streaming down her face, Omasiri pressed on a little further, scanning the sides of the path for any sign, footprints, broken branches, blood, anything. But the ground was covered in fresh dew and fallen leaves, revealing nothing of the night's secrets. After several minutes, Omasiri's frantic search led her nowhere. Her mind whirled. Perhaps her mother hadn't left a body to find. Perhaps the spirit had taken her wholly, leaving no trace. The neatly folded wrapper and comb might be the only farewell Akudo could give. A strangled sob escaped Omasiri's throat. She fell to her knees on the forest path, grasping at the damp soil, as if the earth might somehow surrender her mother if she begged hard enough. "This is my fault, all my fault." She remembered her own words to the old woman. "I offer you my soul for my mother's life." She had done it out of love, never imagining it would lead to this moment, her mother sacrificing herself in return. They had become caught in a cruel exchange of sacrifices. Omasiri felt a gentle touch on her shoulder and whirled around, startled. It was Hila Uzo, panting slightly as if he had been running. Behind him stood Ngozi and Neka, two village women who were friends of her mother. They had followed her when they saw her sprint towards the forest in distress. "My child, come," Hila Uzo said softly. "It's not safe here alone." Omasiri's face crumpled. "Hila, my mother, she's gone," she managed to say between sobs. "She went to the old woman. I know she did." Uzo's face grew anguished as he nodded. "I feared as much when I woke and felt something in the air. I came to find you as quickly as I could." He gently urged Omasiri to stand. Ngozi stepped forward, wrapping a shawl around Omasiri's shaking form. "Omasiri, we heard you shouting. Please come back home," she urged, her own eyes red-rimmed as if holding back tears. "No, I have to find her," Omasiri cried, resisting as Uzo and Ngozi each took an arm kindly. She peered into the forest depths as if expecting Akudo to emerge any moment, smiling and reassuring her that all was well. But the trees stood tall and indifferent. Neka stroked Omasiri's hair. "There's nothing in there for you but danger, child. If she's truly gone to the spirits, we must accept that. You can't follow where she's gone." Omasiri trembled violently. She knew the truth of their words, but accepting it was another matter. "It wasn't supposed to be this way," she whispered. "She was supposed to leave. I was ready to give yourself," Uzo finished gently. He looked at Omasiri with profound compassion. "Your mother would never have been at peace with that. She loved you more than life itself. In the end, she did what you would have done for her. Two hearts, each sacrificing for the other." At that, Omasiri broke down completely. The group slowly led her back towards the village as she wept bitterly in their arms. The mourning villagers paused in their routines to watch with sorrow and confusion as the story spread quickly. Akudo was missing, and something terrible had happened. Back at the hut, Omasiri collapsed onto the mud doorstep, refusing to move. Hila Uzo and the women tried to guide her inside, but she only clutched Akudo's folded wrapper and comb to her chest and rocked back and forth, tears pouring. Neighbors gathered quietly around the yard, murmuring condolences and wiping their own eyes. Akudo had been beloved in the community, always ready with a smile or helping hand. The idea that she had vanished overnight, likely claimed by some dark spirit in exchange for her daughter's well-being, was almost too fantastical and tragic to believe. Yet, many in the village had heard whispers of the family's miracle and Omasiri's odd afflictions. They began to piece together an understanding of what might have transpired. Hila Uzo finally coaxed Omasiri to drink a calming herb potion to soothe her shock. Omasiri drank it numbly, hardly registering the bitter taste. Her wails subsided into silent heaving sobs until exhaustion sapped even her tears. As the sun climbed higher that day, some of the elders convened with Uzo to discuss what to do. There was no body to bury, no way to perform the usual funeral rites. The elders decided that evening, the village would hold a simple ceremony to honor Akudo.
They would light a fire, say prayers for her spirit, and comfort the grieving daughter she left behind. Throughout the day, people came and went, offering quiet words of sympathy, though none of it could touch the raw wound in her heart. Ngozi and Nneka stayed by her side constantly, like guardian aunties, making sure she drank water, occasionally dabbing her forehead with a cool cloth when she seemed too dazed to respond. Omasiri spoke little. Once she asked Uzo in a trembling voice, "Did she suffer?" The healer could only shake his head gently. "I do not think so. The spirits took her swiftly, I believe." He chose his words to bring her any small comfort. As dusk fell that day, the villagers gathered around a bonfire they built in Akudo's compound, near the big fruit tray that Akudo had loved. Omasiri sat at the front, wrapped in a shawl, her face swollen from crying, but now strangely calm, as though she had passed through the worst of the storm and entered a silent, numb space beyond tears. An elder led the prayers, asking the ancestors to receive Akudo kindly, to guide her soul on the journey to the afterlife. Another elder spoke of Akudo's kindness, her strength as a mother, and how dearly she would be missed. People nodded and sniffled. Some openly cried when they recounted how Akudo had seemingly returned from death once, a miracle, and how perhaps she had now willingly gone to save her child. Omasiri listened to these words, feeling as if she were in a dream. The fire before her eyes roared and crackled, and she remembered countless evenings sitting by a similar fire with her mother, talking and laughing. The emptiness beside her was unbearable. When the elders signaled, Omasiri realized they were waiting for her to speak if she wished. She hadn't planned to, but suddenly she felt the need to say something, to acknowledge her mother's sacrifice in her own words. Slowly, she stood on unsteady legs. The villagers watched respectfully, the crackling flames casting warm light on their somber faces. Omasiri struggled to find her voice. "My mother, Akudo, was the best mother anyone could ask for," she began quietly, eyes on the fire, because looking into the crowd was too hard. She taught me what love is. She showed me by how much she gave of herself every day for me." Her voice wavered, but she continued, clutching Akudo's comb in her hand. "4 years ago, I was so afraid of losing her that I did something foolish. I made a deal with a spirit to save her life." A few gasps and murmurs rippled through the listeners, even though many had guessed as much. Uzo closed his eyes, tears escaping down his cheeks. Omasiri forced herself to go on. "My mother didn't know then, but when she found out, she couldn't bear to see me slowly slipping away." Her breath hitched. "So last night, she undid that deal. She gave herself for me." A woman in the crowd began to sob openly. Many others were weeping quietly, astonished by the depth of sacrifice on display. "I want everyone to know," Omasiri said, her voice strengthening with emotion, "what Akudo did. She traded her life for mine, just as I once traded mine for hers. We kept each other alive, and in the end..." Her composure cracked, and a tear rolled down her face. "In the end, she made sure I could live free." Omasiri looked up at the sky, where early stars were peeking out. "Mama, if you can hear me," she called, "I will never forget what you taught me. Your love saved me, twice. I hope I can live in a way that honors that gift." Many of the gathered villagers were openly crying now. Akudo's story, passed in hushed whispers all day, had become real and painfully human in Omasiri's words. Even those who might have thought it folly to deal with spirits could not help but be moved by the mutual devotion of mother and daughter. As Omasiri sat down, Healer Uzo came forward and gently placed a hand on her shoulder in solidarity before addressing the crowd in a solemn voice. "Let this day be remembered in our village. A mother's love, a daughter's love, these are things even spirits must bow to. Akudo's sacrifice reminds us all that love can overcome fear,
and that no life should be extended or improved at the cost of another's suffering. The people murmured in agreement. The bonfire crackled loudly, sending sparks dancing up into the twilight. That night, under the light of stars and flickering flames, the village of Unubi mourned Akudo's passing and celebrated the love that she and Omasiri shared. Omasiri sat surrounded by her community, feeling at once utterly alone and yet supported by many caring arms. When the fire finally died down to glowing embers and people drifted away to their homes, Omasiri remained seated by the warmth until only she and Uzo were left. "You should rest, child," Uzo said softly. "A new day will come in a few hours." Omasiri nodded absently, her gaze on the dying coals. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. I don't know what I'll do now, but thank you for being here." Hila Uzo gave her a sad smile. "You are not alone. We are all with you. Your mother's spirit lives on in this community and in you." With that, he helped Omasiri to her feet. Clutching her mother's wrapper around her shoulders, Omasiri went inside the hut that already felt achingly empty. She lay down on her mat, staring at the thatch roof where shadows danced. Sleep wouldn't come easily, she knew. The scent of her mother's soap still lingered in the air, and it hurt to breathe it in, knowing Akudo would never again lie in the mat across from her. Yet, amid the sorrow, Omasiri felt the faintest glimmer of peace deep inside. Her mother's soul was free and at rest now, and Omasiri's own soul was hers again, fully intact, brimming with memories of love that no spirit could ever steal away. She closed her eyes and whispered into the silence, "I love you, Mama. Thank you." In the quiet that followed, as the last ember in the hearth winked out, Omasiri could almost imagine she heard Akudo's gentle voice answer in return, carried on the night breeze. "I love you too, my precious girl." With that comforting thought, Omasiri finally drifted into a frail, dream-touched sleep, the comb still clasped tightly in her hand. In the weeks and months that followed, life in Unubi slowly returned to its normal rhythms, but for Omasiri, nothing would ever be the same. At first, each day was a struggle. She would wake up expecting to see her mother's gentle face, only to confront the cold absence. Sometimes she caught herself calling out, "Mama, I'm going to fetch water," only to remember that no answer would come. Yet, Omasiri was not truly alone. The villagers, moved by the tragic tale of love and sacrifice, supported her as if she were family to all. Ngozi often came by at dawn to help her with morning chores. Ineka and others insisted she join their families for meals, not wanting her to eat alone every day. The healer Uzo checked on her frequently, providing comforting herbs for dreamless sleep when nightmares of that forest night plagued her. At first, Omasiri moved through her days in a haze of grief, but with time, the sharp pain dulled to a deep ache. She found solace in small things, tending the vegetable garden her mother had loved, patching an old cloth of Akudo's so she could wear it around the house, humming Akudo's favorite songs as she swept the compound. These acts made her feel Akudo's presence still around her. One afternoon, Omasiri gathered the courage to sort through her mother's personal chest. Inside, she found carefully folded clothes, a few beads Akudo used to adorn her hair on special occasions, and a bundle of letters and notes. Among them was a scrap of paper with a recipe for Akudo's special pepper soup and a tiny drawing Omasiri had made as a child of her and her mother holding hands. Akudo had kept that drawing all these years. Omasiri pressed the faded paper to her heart and let herself cry softly, tears of both sorrow and gratitude. As planting season came, Omasiri threw herself into work on their small yam field. It was hard labor, but it cleansed her mind. With each yam mound she raised, she thought of Akudo, imagining her mother smiling proudly from the spirit world. Villagers often came to help unasked, and in the evenings they would gather by Omasiri's yard, sharing stories or just quietly being there so she wouldn't feel lonely. Children who had been told in vague terms that Auntie Akudo went to be with the ancestors sometimes asked Omasiri why she looked sad or if her mother would ever come back. Omasiri would gently tell them, "She won't come back, but she's watching over us all from the spirit world." Often, she would then find herself telling the children little tales her mother had told her to keep Akudo's memory alive. The children listened with wide eyes, and in those moments, Omasiri felt a bittersweet happiness, sharing a piece of her mother with them. One day, Omasiri went with Hila Uzo to the shrine of the ancestors at the edge of the village. She brought with her Akudo's comb and one of the best yams from her harvest. By the ancient Iroko tree that served as a sacred place, Omasiri offered the yam and placed the comb at its base. She knelt and spoke softly. "Great ancestors, accept these in honor of my mother, Akudo. She joins you now. May her spirit find rest, and may her love continue to guide me." A gentle breeze stirred the leaves above, and Omasiri felt a sudden peace wash over her. As she rose, Uzo commented quietly, "Your mother is at peace, and she is very proud of you, Omasiri." The young woman nodded, wiping a tear but smiling. She said, "I can feel it." Though Akudo was physically gone, Omasiri sensed her presence in countless ways. When a problem arose, she'd often hear Akudo's voice in her mind advising patience or courage. When she helped a neighbor or comforted a crying child, she felt she was continuing her mother's kindness. In time, these things gave her a sense of purpose. Omasiri became more involved with helping others in the village. She assisted the healer in gathering herbs, she volunteered to watch over fussy toddlers when their mothers were busy, and she took over Akudo's role in organizing the women's communal work days. Keeping busy and being useful to others helped fill the void in her heart with meaning. The story of Akudo and Omasiri quietly spread beyond their village. A traveler passing through heard fragments of it and carried it to the next town. Over months, it became a tale people told around evening fires. The girl who bargained her soul for her mother, and the mother who paid the price to save her child. Some details grew exaggerated in retelling. Some said Akudo wrestled a forest demon with her bare hands, others that Omasiri had been under a curse from birth. But at its core, everyone understood the powerful lesson of love and sacrifice. At first, Omasiri felt exposed hearing that others knew of her personal tragedy. But she realized it wasn't mockery or gossip that fueled the story's spread. It was reverence and the desire to teach. People were using it as a cautionary tale, warning their loved ones about dealing with spirits and also as an inspiring example of selfless love. One evening, about a year after her mother's passing, Omasiri herself sat among a small circle of children and elders by a new fire in the village square. They had begged her to tell the story one more time for some visiting relatives who hadn't heard it firsthand. She had hesitated, then agreed, seeing in their eyes genuine interest and respect. With a steady voice, Omasiri recounted the tale, how Akudo fell ill, how Omasiri sought the help of a forest spirit out of desperate love, and the dire cost of that choice. She described the gradual loss of her soul, the dreams that haunted her mother, and finally Akudo's brave journey into the forest to break the curse by sacrificing herself. Her words were simple and heartfelt, painting the picture without embellishment. When she finished, the listeners sat in awed silence. One of the visiting young men, clearly moved, said, "Thank you for sharing that. We will carry this lesson home with us. Such love and such a warning about seeking help from dark places." An elder who had known Akudo placed a hand on Omasiri's shoulder and said, "Your mother's love lives on in you and in this story. We will make sure it's never forgotten." Omasiri realized in that moment that while she would always ache for her mother, Akudo truly would never be gone as long as her story and love continued to touch others. Every telling was like stoking a flame that kept Akudo's spirit alive in the hearts of the people. As the second year without Akudo approached its end, Omasiri found herself smiling again at times, a real smile. She still talked to her mother in her thoughts, and sometimes in the quiet of early morning, she swore she felt an answer, a warmth in her chest that told her Akudo heard her. One night, Omasiri had a dream unlike the nightmares that used to torment her. In this dream, she walked through the forest, but it was daylight and the path was bright. At the end of the trail, she saw her mother standing whole and healthy, wrapped in a beautiful white cloth, glowing with light. Akudo was smiling. She opened her arms and Omasiri fell into them, feeling the safest and happiest she'd ever felt. When Omasiri woke, she didn't cry. Instead, she felt comforted. She took it as a sign that Akudo was truly at peace and watching over her still. From that day, Omasiri vowed to live not in sorrow, but in a way that honored the sacrifice that had been made. She would help who she could, love fully, and face life's challenges with courage and wisdom. She hoped one day to have children of her own, and she would tell them about their grandmother Akudo, the woman of unparalleled love and bravery. In quiet moments, Omasiri would reach up and touch the simple wooden comb she often kept slid in her hair now, the comb that had belonged to her mother. It reminded her of whose daughter she was, and it gave her strength. Omasiri's life moved forward. Seasons changed, children grew up, elders passed on, and new families were formed. Through all these tides of life, the tale of the two souls intertwined by love continued to be told in Onubi and beyond. And Omasiri herself, though carrying scars of loss, became a source of gentle strength in the community, a living testament to the enduring power of love and the importance of wisdom in desperate times. People would sometimes seek her counsel, especially if they were frightened or faced difficult choices. Omasiri would listen kindly and share what she had learned through her own journey. No matter how hopeless it seems, we must be careful what we sacrifice and what help we seek. Love is powerful, but we must be wise too. No life should be saved by the slow death of another. She spoke those words with conviction, having lived their truth, and those who heard her knew they were hearing the voice of experience, tempered by suffering and lit by love. So it was that day by day, Omasiri healed and built a new life while keeping Akudo's memory burning bright, and the story that was once her personal pain became a guiding light to others, a warning and a lesson passed from one generation to the next. Many years later, on a cool evening in Onubi, a group of children gathered around the village elder as he stoked a small fire. The night was clear and the stars blinked overhead. The elder's voice was low and rhythmic as he finished recounting a familiar tale, the story of Omasiri and Akudo. The children sat wide-eyed, some leaning forward, some clutching their little siblings' hands. Though they had heard the story before, it never failed to leave them hushed in wonder. So you see, the old man concluded, looking around at the young faces lit by firelight, love can save a life, but love without wisdom can also destroy. Omasiri's love for her mother saved Akudo, but it also brought great suffering. And Akudo's love for her daughter saved Omasiri in the end, but at the price of her own life. The children nodded solemnly. A boy who was new to the village raised his hand tentatively. "Grandpa, what happened to Omasiri after? Did she live happily again?" The elder smiled gently. Omasiri lived a long life. She became wise and kind, and she made sure no one ever forgot what happened. She never married. Some say her heart had given all its love to her mother, but she was beloved by all the village children as a sort of mother to them all. I was one of those children she watched over, he added, eyes misty with memory. He taught me many things. He remembered when Omasiri herself departed this world not many years ago, after a long life. She had passed peacefully in her sleep as an old woman with a gentle smile on her face. On that day, the entire village had mourned and celebrated her in equal measure. They built a memorial beside Akudo's favorite fruit tree, so mother and daughter would symbolically rest together. Before her death, Omasiri had made the elders promise to continue sharing what she and Akudo had been through so that future generations might learn. She had said, "Do not cry for me too long, for I go to join my mother. Instead, teach others with our story." And so they did. He paused, then continued. She taught us that no life should be built upon the slow death of another. It's a lesson we must carry in our hearts always. It means we must not save ourselves by unjustly harming someone else, because such acts will haunt us. A thoughtful boy near the back piped up, "Grandpa, if someone feels that desperate again, like Omasile did, what should they do instead? Should they never pray or ask spirits for help?" The elder gave the boy a kindly nod. "Prayers to the good God and honorable spirits are fine, child. When we pray to God or our ancestors with a pure heart, we seek guidance, not bargains. But one must never bargain blindly with unknown forces, no matter how desperate. Instead, we should turn to our family, our community, and our trusted faith for help." If Omasiri had shared her pain with the village and trusted in the God's wisdom, perhaps a different path could have been found. We must remember that patience and wisdom are as important as love in times of crisis. The fire had begun to die down to glowing embers, and one by one parents appeared at the edges of the gathering to collect their children for bedtime. The children stood, each thanking the elder politely. They would carry the weight of this tale in their hearts, fearful of making a similar mistake, yet comforted by the image of love so strong. As the last child waved good night and scampered off home, the elder stared into the embers. He whispered an old saying in the Igbo tongue under his breath. "Sacrifices made in desperation echo through generations, and the soul is always the one that remembers." Though the children did not hear those final words, they were ingrained in the very fabric of the tale they had learned. The elder knew that long after he was gone, others would sit by new fires telling the same story, preserving its wisdom. In a quiet hut on the other side of the village, an old woman who as a girl had heard Omasiri's story told firsthand was humming a familiar lullaby to her restless grandchild. She rocked the baby gently in her arms as she sang, the same tune that had comforted generations. The infant's eyes grew heavy, and soon the child drifted to sleep to the soft sound. The grandmother's thoughts wandered back to long ago when she herself had sat at Omasiri's feet listening to that very song. Though decades had passed, she remembered the warmth and safety of Akudo's lullaby as if it were yesterday. The melody drifted on the night air, gentle and soothing. And so the tale traveled beyond Onubi, spreading from one community to the next. In distant villages, elders would sometimes tell a similar story with different names, but the lesson stayed true. Travelers carried it along trade routes, around distant campfires and village squares. The tale found new listeners. Sometimes the details changed, a different village name or the spirits given other titles, but the heart of the story remained the same. Even wandering bards began to weave it into their songs during festivals, ensuring no one would forget the girl and her mother whose love challenged the spirits. And thus the story lived on, carried in hearts and voices. The girl who traded her soul for her mother's life, and the mother who gave her life to return that soul. It is said that in Igbo land, even now, parents tell their children this tale when dusk falls, so that they may learn that love is strongest when tempered with wisdom, and that the soul, our very essence, always remembers the cost of our choices. The village elder gently stirred the embers one last time before retiring for the night. As he rose, he fancied he heard a faint melody in the rustling leaves, a familiar lullaby carrying through the darkness. He smiled and murmured a soft goodnight toward the trees, believing that as long as their story was told by loving voices under starlit skies, Omasiri and Akudo's love would live on forever in the hearts of the people. And with that comforting thought, he left the dwindling fire and walked slowly home, his old heart at peace. For him, the flame of their love would never truly extinguish, not in this life or the next. This story teaches that love is one of the most powerful forces in human life, but love without wisdom can lead to deep suffering. Omasiri's desperate act shows how fear and blind love can push a person to make dangerous choices, while Akudo's sacrifice shows the true meaning of selfless love, a love that protects without destroying another. The story warns that no life should be sustained by the slow loss of another person's soul, and that bargains made in desperation often demand a greater price than expected. It reminds us to seek help with patience, wisdom, and community support, because true love should preserve life, dignity, and the soul, not trade them away. Thank you so much for watching. Your love and support mean everything to me. If this story inspired you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your loved ones to spread the inspiration. I'd also love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more interesting African stories. See you in the next video. Bye!